Howdy, y'all. Active Asshole on Roids here with another glorious rant. That's Active Asshole on Roids, kryptonite for conservatives. I'm off my roids, off my rocker, and on the warpath. Here we go. Tonight on this video, I'm going to be discussing two issues. The first one has to do with the false equivalency, the false equivalency being applied as a reason for not voting by supposed progressives for not wanting to vote just because they can't get what they want right away. And I understand this goes back to the whole people want their pony thing that pissed off a lot of progressives and liberals and other civil activists like myself back in the day. But there is a little bit of truth to this, and I have to go with it. The second part of the video will be directed at both conservatives, at both liberals and conservatives, because it'll be about it'll be based around the whole tendency to bitch and moan and say you're gonna leave this country or whatever. Just because you can't get your way in politics. You know, the whole, I'm going to move to Canada, I'm going to move this, I'm going to move out of this state there. Again, so I'm going to piss off a lot of people with this video, but I just can't help it. It's something that needs to be done. I just have to add my 2 cents on this issue. And this is an old issue. This issue's been around since like this one's been around online since the center-left netroots of Marcus Melitzis Zuniga and Jeremy Armstrong finally got off the ground in the spring of 2005. So I'm probably not. I know I'm not the first one to tackle this false equivalency issue or the whole tendency to bitch and moan and say you're going to move to Canada just because you didn't get your way in an election, but that doesn't stop me from trying. What can I say? Let's get into the red meat. Again, you can tell, no transcript. This is just me, you know, just saying shit off the top of my head. While I was on the line at work tonight, I thought to myself, maybe I should do a video about false equivalency. Yeah, Matt, do a video on false equivalency and make it a twofer. Yeah, okay, we'll do that. All right, here we go. Where should I begin? Well, for the longest time, I've heard people claim, I've heard supposed civil activists claim that there's no point in voting under the premise that there's no difference between the two parties. Now, that's only half true when one thinks about it. Half true. And here's why. Here's why. I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it. All right. For one thing, it's only half true because you have to think about the factions within the party. You have to think about which faction is on our side within the Democratic Party. In the Democratic Party's case, the faction would be the Progressive Caucus. All right. And those are the guys that are on our side. And then there are the blue dogs and the third way corporatists of the Rahm Emanuels and the Glenn Crowders of the Democratic Party, the ones that aren't on our side. Mostly just a bunch of conservatives who decided to run in a blue district under a Democratic label just because they couldn't get elected as a Republican doing it otherwise. Yeah, I've seen plenty of those asshats in my own state in my time. But the thing is, one has to think about whether, you know, one has to think about the utter short-sightedness of the false equivalency claim. And I understand a lot of my fellow civil activists, a lot of them really do believe this. They really do believe this. But you have to take into account the fact that it really does matter who wins the presidency. It really does. Because one has to think about political appointments, one has to think about the remnants of the old patronage system, party patronage. One has to think about all of the remnants of the old spoil system. Yes, there is a little bit of that left over from the 19th century, and it benefits both parties. And whoever does win the presidential election, usually their states, the states that voted for the president, are the ones that actually get more federal aid in the long run. And throughout the tenure of that president, of the sitting president. And this, and I understand that there's a limit to how much this applies to our side, because Republicans, they like to obstruct the living shit out of us to make sure that we can't get anything, even when we do have someone in the White House. Yeah, and even when they're not, even when the Republicans are in the minority, the Democratic Party, they like to hide behind the Republican obstructionism to give their blue dogs and their third way DLCers cover under which to put the screws to the base after they've talked the good game during the primaries, just to win the primaries, just so they can turn around and move back to the supposed center, usually being center right, after the primaries are over, after they've appealed to the liberal base constituencies enough to pull the big old switcheroo. Yeah, you've all been there before. I guess one could say that elections do matter. It does matter who you vote for in the party, but at the same time, the primaries matter even more, because you got to be careful about who the hell you're putting in there. You got to be careful about who's winning the primary of your own party. I mean, you got good ones like Elizabeth Warren. You got good ones like Al Franken, and then you got bad ones like Max Baucus, who's just a complete center right shill in Democratic clothing, who hides behind the whole debt for the sake of austerity, just like the Republicans do. And then you have, well, on the Republican side, you just have Republicans. You just have hardcore Republicans, and mostly because the Lincoln Chafees and Rockefellers of the Republican Party are dead. They're extinct. What can I say? But it's mostly a battle between corporatist Republicans and Tea Party Republicans, who are just as corporatist, but at the same time are harder to control and don't really bow down to the Karl Rove machine as much as we like, as much as people think they do. But at the same time, they'll give a Republican, they'll do whatever the Heritage Foundation and the Cato Institute tell. Sorry, hiccups. Just as much as the corporatist Republicans do. And one also has to think about one has to look back at Al Gore and George W. Bush. Ask yourself this: Al Gore, uh, you know, he won the Nobel Peace Prize, didn't he? I mean, come on, this is he actually did something to push for attention on the climate change issue. But again, you know, he as soon as he was out of Washington, the guy actually tried to fight for good causes. You know, he tried to be like Jimmy Carter and actually fight for better causes than what he was able to when he was in office. And what has George W. Bush done since he left office? Now, George W. Bush, he was complete and utter corporate shill, scumbag piece of deregulating, give the fox the power over the henhouse kind of asshole. But at the same but let's not think about his presidency. God knows we don't want to think about that horrible memory of 8 years of that jackass. Repress it, just repress it, people. It's bad. We want to remember for the sake of understanding why we should never have another Republican in the White House again. But at the same time, we want to forget because it was that bad. All right. You know, what has George? I'm thinking about what George W. Bush has done since he's left the White House. What has George W. Bush done since he's left the White House? Well, he's done everything he could to have other conservatives whitewash his shitty legacy. A legacy, you know, there's been a lot of self-aggrandizement on his end, and a lot of conservatives within the conservative movement. They won't say it openly though. They still like the guy, and they'll defend George W. Bush to the fucking death, just not publicly because he was unpopular. They can't do that. It's like you never saw any of these assholes from the Bush administration at the Republican National Convention, and it's like they're in the witness protection program, as Jon Stewart once called it. They just want to whitewash their own history, and conservatives are working overtime to do that now. But again, I digressed. Uh, let's think about this. Usually, after a Democrat leaves office, he or she actually tries to fight for good causes. A Republican, what do they do? What do they do after they leave office? We have to, it really does matter who's in office at the end of the day. When you think about political appointments to the bureaucracy that are going to be there for the rest of their life, I mean, that's the reason why the Republicans in Congress dig their heels in so vehemently against federal judge appointments by Barack Obama, is because they really want to make sure that those appointments are open, as many of them are open as possible, when another Republican someday takes the White House, so they can ram through more political appointments for themselves. They don't want a Democrat accomplishing anything after the Democrats win, because one, is part of their playbook, because Newt Gingrich himself during his years in the 90s, back when he was relevant, as if he were ever really relevant, but once he stated that he wanted to make sure that even if a Democrat got elected, he wouldn't be able to accomplish anything. He wouldn't be able to govern. So, yeah. Republican playbook right there. Standard Republican playbook, yada, yada, yada. Again, it really does matter who you vote for. It really does matter, because you have to think about all of these other things. It's not just about what you're going to get during those 4 years or 8 years in which the Democrat or the Republican are in office, or for that matter, what you're going to get for those 2 to how many other tenures that terms that congressperson or Senate person is going to senator is going to be in office. You have to think about all the stuff the fallout. You got to think about what other things are they going to affect around them and such. I understand it would be nice to have a Green Party. I addressed this once in one of my other videos, and I got at least one guy on there who wanted to argue about, the progressives go into the Progressive Caucus and they don't come out. I beg to differ on some level, but I'm going to save that for another time. But I will say that the Green Party would take years to build up to make it competitive. So Democratic primaries, if you really want to get the progressive agenda rolling, the best short-term solution is just to vote for a progressive in the primaries and make sure that the DLC and the Blue Dog Coalition are kept out of power. This it really does matter in the end. It really does matter who you vote for, because anyone who takes the third-party route is in essence just dividing the left, and they're throwing their money down a shithole that in the short term is going to do nothing. And if the Republicans wind up getting elected as a result of dividing the left, hey, they'll do a lot more damage than even a corporatist or blue dog Democrat could if they won the primaries. You have to think about that. Vote smarter. I understand that defensive and off. There's a difference between a defensive and an offensive vote, but you have to think about the fact that sometimes you can be both offensive and defensive with your vote. But it has to be during and after the primaries, and it has to be after considering the long-term costs, all of the long-term costs, political appointments and otherwise. It's now. Let me get on to my other video, to my other subject of the video that I'm making. Of course, I'm making it. Liberals and conservatives who claim they're going to move to Canada just because their guy didn't get into the White House. I have an argument for both conservatives and liberals for why that's a bad idea for either of them to act on this, even though 99% of them aren't serious, that they're just saying it because to voice their disgust with that they didn't win the election. Uh, I'm still going to take a whack at this, all right? Because I've heard a lot of liberals say, tell me to because Alabama is so bad that I should just leave and go somewhere else. But and I understand they're looking out for my well-being because they want me to go somewhere where I'll have a better chance of getting a better job, where I won't be hammered under the boot heel of the worst healthcare system and one of the worst healthcare environments and worst labor environments in America. I understand that, and I thank you all for caring about my well-being. But I can't stress this next thing that I'm about to say enough. Uh, if you move to another place, if I move to another place, if we all continue to just move to another place, whether it be another state or another country, it's just ceding more of the playing field to the American right wing. It's just ceding more of the playing field to the religious right, to the John Birchers, to the Timothy McVeigh, Ron Paulite, Oath Keeper, sovereign citizen crowd, militia rightists. It's only ceding more ground to the Austrian economics people. It's only ceding more ground to those who push privatization, deregulation, and austerity. You're giving ground when you do that. When you move to another place, just because the right wing is so heavily populated in that area, what you're saying is that hey, right wing, you can have this place. To me, that's even though if you stay there, you're probably never going to have a future as a progressive activist because you'll never be able to rise up due to the sheer number of conservatives beating you down and all that. You have to realize that if you don't make them fight even on their own heavily populated territory, they're going to have a lot more money and resources left over to transfer to other areas to fight you there even after you've moved away from the old area. You see, that's how it is. When a Democratic when you don't have a challenger for a Republican incumbent, what happens? More of the money is diverted toward other seats, toward other high priority seats where the Republican isn't doing so good, and he winds up squeaking out a win. And this makes all the difference in close races. We have to think about the fact that when you leave an area, when you leave a district, when you leave a home state just because you're upset that there's so many Republicans around, it's sending a message to the American right that you can just be run out anywhere. It's sending a message to them that, hey, we don't have to even fight hard to take this place. So now let's just take all the resources we were going to spend on fighting you here. Let's take all those resources and put them into initiatives through the American Legislative Exchange Council and the state legislature of that blue state, and then they can push for stuff there and fuck up the new home of the liberal, because they'll follow you. It's already happening in the European Union. To any liberal, progressive, social democrat like myself who's thought about moving to the European Union to get away from the American right, the politics of austerity, of privatization, of deregulation, they've moved to the European Union countries. Scandinavia won't be safe much longer. They're especially starting, the European Commission, they've initiated a series of policies to allowing private companies to buy out massive amounts of public assets, such as power plants, water supplies, especially in places like Italy, Portugal, and Greece, and even France. If you don't defeat them here at home, in our country, if you can't beat the American right here, they'll be free. They'll have a free hand if you don't fight them here to export it to other parts of the world, and it'll be even harder to beat them then. It doesn't matter where you move. It doesn't matter whether it's Canada or whether it's the European countries like the UK, especially the UK, and France and Italy and Greece. It doesn't matter whether it's even New Zealand and Australia. They're going to follow you there. Their policies are going to follow you there because Washington conservatives are going to be spending money. They're going to be giving logistical aid to conservatives and rightists and neoliberalists and Austrian economists and other parts of the world to help them push their agenda. They do it in Canada already. The Washington conservatives help conservatives in Canada already. I mean, look, they have. Is Stephen Harper still the Prime Minister of Canada? Is he? But yeah, the point stands, man. It does. Running from them, making it where conservatives have it easier in states, making it where they have a head start of like 132 electoral votes every election. We really have to think about these things. You have to think about these things. I can't leave Alabama because I understand that I'm ceding my responsibility as a civil activist in this state. I'm running away. If I run away, then it'll send a message to the entire conservative movement that hey, you have Alabama, you can take it for granted. Now you can export the philosophy to other parts, and they're doing it right now. The Midwest. This is old news again. Think about the Midwest for a second. That was unassailable to the American right for a long time. But the politics of the Rust Belt, particularly Old Dixie, right to work state laws, right-wing tort reform, right-wing governors turning those Midwestern states into their own little fiefdoms, like Scott Walker and like that other jackass in Ohio. It's following you home. You move somewhere else, they get a stronger hand, it follows you home. It follows you, damn it. It's like a fucking dog. It follows you. Right-wing politics will follow you no matter where you go if you don't stand your ground, if you don't stand your ground and fight them wherever you can. There's no escaping them. Doesn't matter if you go to the bluest state in America. It just means that you bought yourself a little bit of time. You've gone into silent mode, and you've ceded the field to them. Now let me talk to now I'm going to switch gears. This next part is for conservatives who claimed after Barack Obama won the presidency in 2008 that they were going to move to Canada. And yes, a few of them were saying that after 2012 as well, actually a lot of them. This one's going to be a little easier to, this one's, no, not necessarily easier. This one's, when conservatives say that they're going to move to another industrialized country, I wonder if they even took the time to study those countries. They claim they want to move out of the United States. They claim that they wanted to move away from America because it was becoming socialist, as if socialism were a bad thing. But they never actually take the time to study the countries that they claim they're going to move to. I mean, every other industrialized nation in the world, even with the Thatcherite economic policies being put in play by the European Commission, there's a strong chance that those countries are still going to be far more left of center than the American right. A lot more left of center when you think about it politically, because for one thing, the people in Europe, they're actually protesting like hell. They're fighting tooth and nail, ready to kick the living hell out of things. Believe me, if liberals in America tipped over a car and made a ruckus like that, conservatives really would think twice. But when I'm going, but the thing is, conservatives who say that they're going to move to Canada, to get away from Obama's socialized medicine, away from Obamacare. I'm just like, what? Uh, Canada has universal health care, the very thing you say you're trying to get away from here, which doesn't exist here, which isn't in Obamacare. Obamacare, what is called Obamacare today, was originally developed by the conservative movement's Heritage Foundation as an answer by conservatives to Clinton's health care reform plan back in the 90s. Barack Obama's health care victories were mostly just giving the conservatives of the 1990s what they wanted. Claiming that is socialized medicine is like claiming is like a I don't know, is like a mujahideen fighter. I'm gonna try to put this in simple terms so conservatives can understand this. It's like claiming that it's like a mujahideen fighter claiming that Osama bin Laden was the second coming of the evil Jesus Christian demigod, whatever. You get where I'm coming from. It's just it's utter lunacy. But then when has that ever stopped the WorldDaily.net crowd? So yeah, my question to conservatives is, where are you gonna go? The rest of the world won't buy into your garbage. They won't buy into the whole climate change denial, with the exception of maybe about a quarter of the population of the UK. But again, Rupert Murdoch's empire has a lot of clout there. But even there, you'd be the laughing stock of the country. Where are you gonna go? Come on, conservatives. I'd like to know. Where are you gonna go? Can't go to Canada. You can't go to Canada because that's actually that's more like Western Europe than the United States, especially today. Can't go to Europe because they'd laugh you right out of the fucking country. You can't go to Australia or New Zealand. Hell, New Zealand had its stint with Austrian economics and Friedmanite economics, and after the initial failings of it, they turned against it pretty damn quick. Took a decade or so, but they're not going back to that. You gonna go to South Korea? Oh wait, you don't like non-whites. You're Eurocentric assholes. So my question to conservatives: where are you gonna go? Gotta antagonize the little bastards. Again, this is Active Asshole on Roids. Peace out, everybody.